They were targeted. It was an execution.
A brutal killing.
There was a blood trail all the way out from his room to the front door.
A dark mystery with multiple suspects.
We started to focus in now on that 24 hours of who they may have been in contact with.
He would make statements like he wanted to kill them, that they deserved to die.
She had made threats that she was going to come by and shoot up his law firm.
He has the ability to gain the entire, very successful business. We're talking millions and millions of dollars.
The truth will be revealed.
I said, two things are going to happen today. I'm going to go home tonight, and you're going to go to jail for murder.
Every day in North America, dozens of people are murdered. The key to solving the toughest of these homicides lies in the final 24 hours of the victim's life. To crack the case, detectives must reconstruct that critical timeline. The minutes and hours containing evidence that can help unlock the mystery and catch the killer. Coral Gables, a haven of wealth and luxury nestled a few miles south of Miami.
It's beautiful. I mean, Coral Gables is considered, I think they call it like the little Venice of South Florida because of its waterways.
Safe and usually quiet.
In the city of Coral Gables, murders are very few and far between.
But in August 2004, that peace is violently shattered.
Coral Gables 911.
They shot me.
They shot you?
Yes.
With what?
I don't know.
When uniformed officers from the Coral Gables Police Department arrived on the scene, they were met at the door by John Sutton.
He's bleeding from the head. They see wounds to his hands and possibly the shoulder. They ask him what's going on. He says, I'm not sure, I've been shot. And they ask him if there's anyone else inside the house. And he says, yes, his wife.
Inside, police discover a bloodbath.
We found a major blood scene in the southeast bedroom, which was where John was. There was a blood trail all the way out from his room to the front door. We located Susan Sutton in the southwest bedroom in bed where she was shot and she was obviously deceased.
John had been shot multiple times in the face. He was in pretty bad shape. He had to be transported immediately to the hospital.
As John is raced to the ER, Miami-Dade homicide detectives Rosanna Cordero-Stutz, Larry Bellew, and Art Nanny are tasked with finding Susan Sutton's killer. They must now uncover every significant detail from the last 24 hours of her life.
Establishing a timeline is absolutely critical because you have to have some sort of foundation upon which to build a case. You have to know where someone was before they were murdered, what they were doing, who they were with, because all those things can lead to a potential suspect.
Their top priority is to speak with the sole survivor of the attack, John Sutton. But he's in critical condition, undergoing 14-hour emergency surgery.
We don't know John's gonna make it. In fact, our suspicion is John is not gonna make this. We're looking at a double homicide.
I was doing bad. No doubt from the loss of an excessive amount of blood. I was given last rites the next day, Monday morning, and also the next day, Tuesday morning. Somehow on Wednesday, I started to come around and make some improvement.
John wakes up from a medically induced coma to find his room filled with detectives looking for answers.
John tries really hard to try to piece together what occurred that evening, but the truth is that he has a very hard time. He's got some big holes in his memory from the trauma.
And it's not just the result of shock.
The gunshot wound that entered John Sutton's head detached his retinas.
I had a multiplicity of injuries. When the pain medication wore out, everything hurt, and I was blind. I don't remember being shot in the head at all.
The details about that night come slowly and in fragments.
We slept in separate rooms as a result of my snoring. At about 10 o'clock, maybe a little bit before 10, Susan went into the bedroom. I went to the bathroom. While I was going to the bathroom, I heard a big bang. I had no idea what it was, but if it had been something serious, I expected that Susan would have called out or said, "Help me," or something happened. I went to the bed. I sat on the bed. In comes a man with a black hat, black shirt, black pants, and the firing started. It felt as though I had taken a dive and landed right on my face. And I was confused, didn't know what was going on.
Despite his best efforts, John gives police almost nothing to go on.
It was safe to say that he did not know the person who shot him. He really had no description of the person at all.
And having drifted in and out of consciousness for days, it's only now that detectives are able to tell John the fate of his wife.
The reaction was, I basically lost all emotional ability to recognize what had happened, what was happening, and what would happen. I just was out of it. I still feel guilty that I didn't go to the funeral.
John's loss is compounded by the mystery of who killed his wife and why.
From an investigative point of view, you have to consider who was their intended target. Was it that they were after John and Susan was just collateral damage? Was it someone who was angry with Susan and John happened to be home at the time?
A clue from the crime scene offers a potential motive.
The responding officer advised that there was a point of entry of a sliding glass door opposite of where the victims were shot.
We considered the possibility that what occurred was actually a robbery, home invasion gone wrong.
But other details don't support this idea.
Susan had jewelry everywhere, expensive jewelry. There was cash and credit cards in plain sight, where someone who had the motive of money would have easily been able to grab it and take it with them when they fled, but that didn't happen. Whoever came in went across the entire house, literally from one end of the residence to the exact opposite end, as far as you could go, shot both people, and then turned around and fled.
For the detectives, there's only one other option left.
There was a lot of bullet trauma to Susan Sutton, which meant that a lot of anger was directed towards her.
It was an execution. They were targeted. They were going to kill John and Susan Sutton.
Their only hope of finding Susan's killer now rests with the timeline.
We started to focus in on that 24 hours of who they may have been in contact with.
They learn of a celebration dinner John says had taken place just hours beforehand.
Susan cooked for her own birthday party and some southwestern salad, as I recall.
The people that were there was her husband, John Sutton, her son, Christopher Sutton, Christopher Sutton's girlfriend, Juliet Driscoll, and Teddy Montato.
Teddy Montato was John Sutton's partner in the law firm. He was also a good close friend of the family. We also learned that Juliet Driscoll was a secretary that worked for John.
John and Teddy specialized in civil litigation, and some recent success was also being toasted that night.
They had won a big case, and they were celebrating having gotten that money.
Teddy tells police that having arrived at the house at 7 o'clock, he then left at around 9:30. This makes him the last person to see the Suttons before the attack. Strangely, he's also the first person to show up at the crime scene.
I was the one that told him officially that Susan had died, that she had been declared dead on the scene. And he became very emotional about that. He was very visibly shaken by that news. That seemed a bit above and beyond what most normal people would have reacted. He wasn't blood relative. He was a friend of the family, lived in another house.
As Detective Cordero Stutz probes further, her curiosity turns into suspicion.
Teddy tells me that he is a competitive shooter and that he had been earlier that Sunday shooting, and therefore he would have gunshot residue on his hands were we to test him. When we're in the midst of a homicide investigation, somebody, clearly identifying themselves as, I'm gonna have gunshot residue, is something that a bit of a red flag.
The unsolicited information puts the spotlight firmly on John Sutton's business partner.
It's visible that he is in conflict. I felt that there was something he wanted to tell me, but he just didn't know how or was afraid to.
But is he a killer? There's still a big question mark.
Teddy Montoto's admission of handling a gun only hours before the shooting of John and Susan Sutton has detectives questioning whether he was responsible for the attack.
There are many reasons why Teddy could have been a very plausible suspect in this shooting. He has the ability to gain the entire, very successful business from the death of his partner.
In some murder cases, money becomes the motive for the murder. How it plays out in the sense of who promised money, who paid money, all of that is semantics to me. Money is a great motivator. Money makes people kill.
Detective Cordero Stutz presses Teddy further, but his answers only deepen the mystery.
He told me that he had been on the phone with Susan, and he heard what he described as a loud bang and maybe even a gunshot, and that then the phone went dead. But then he kept calling back and wasn't able to get a hold of anyone. And eventually he decided that the best course was to actually drive back to the house to make sure they were okay. And when he gets there, the police are on the scene and have it taped off, and he's unable to actually go up to the house.
Detectives hone in on why Teddy is on the phone with the wife of his business partner so late at night.
It just didn't add up. He just left a party, and if they were going to have conversations pertaining to business and all stuff, you'd think it would have happened during that time frame. We've got to find out now why he was this important to Susan Sutton to be having a conversation at that time of the night.
Teddy was strongly affected by what had happened to Susan. He's extremely nervous, and I had a very strong feeling that he wasn't being forthcoming. Investigations are a percentage of fact-finding, but it's also a percentage of your own personal experience and what other people call their gut feeling. All of these bits and pieces that kind of rub you the wrong way, they're not enough, obviously, in regards to making an arrest or anything like that, but it's definitely something that makes you dig deeper. So I discussed it with the lead investigator, and we talked about the possibilities of asking him to submit to a lie detector test.
Polygraph examinations are extremely helpful in certain circumstances. It is to send messages to the person, number one, that you're having interviewed. You don't believe them. We don't know what the person is lying about, but we know they're lying.
Teddy agrees to the test and then fails.
Specifically, he fails in regards to the relationship between himself and Susan.
Despite this, Teddy continues to protest his innocence, so Cordero Stutz turns her focus to the physical evidence.
When Teddy Montoto responds to the police station to take his polygraph, he admits to us that he's now brought his weapon with him. It was a 9mm, which was consistent with the casings on the scene. And we impounded it and tested it to see if, in fact, this was the murder weapon.
While the detectives await the ballistics result, they begin to question others they can place on the victim's 24-hour timeline.
In any investigation, you want to interview anybody who has knowledge about what happened just prior to the incident, if you can. So just reconstructing what happened that night altogether was very important.
Chris Sutton and his girlfriend Juliet Driscoll were also at the house that night.
I learned that they had been at the house for dinner around 7 p.m. and that Christopher and Juliet had left around 9 p.m. to go see a movie.
As the team looked to confirm the young couple's alibi, they also delved deeper into the Sutton family history.
We had learned that Christopher was born to a 15-year-old mother and was adopted at a young age.
Well, there were infertility issues, and therefore we went the adoption route. Well, she was thrilled. She couldn't have been more happy, as he was an infant and a toddler.
But Chris's behavior then takes a troubling turn.
As he matured into a teenager, became difficult to get along with. He was sort of bucking his system, having more and more problems getting along with his parents.
He was always getting into trouble. When he was 17 years old, Susan approached John and said, "Look, we need to do something with Chris."
They decided to send him to a strict behavioral reform school in Samoa.
We were at our wits' end, and we had lengthy conversations, and this seemed like this was a good way to go.
The idea was to help Chris find his way, but even here, he remained defiant.
Well, there was rumors of some very hard discipline.
One of the things that they said was occurring at the school is that there was like an isolation room where if you broke the rules, you were locked away in this isolation room for hours at a time.
And he thought he was going to get out when he turned 18 years old. But he didn't realize that John Sutton went to a court and had an order signed to keep him until he completed the school, which infuriated Christopher Sutton.
The disturbing details of his past are enough to make Chris a potential suspect.
Christopher has a history. He's been in trouble before. He's given his parents a hard time. But the night of the incident, he's not there.
According to Chris, they arrived at the theater at 9:30 p.m. They then sat down to watch the film at 10 o'clock, and it ended a few hours later.
Juliet confirms that she and Christopher had gone to the movies and that they had then afterwards gone home and gone to bed. Once we found out what movie theater they'd gone to in the time, we were able to get the CCTV footage of the two of them leaving the movies, which was sometime around midnight.
The couple's alibi is rock solid. So the detectives delve further into the Suttons' final day. This leads them to John's thriving legal business.
I got up early and went to the office at about 9:30, checked my mail, reviewed some cases.
Some of the closest friends that we spoke to said that John was the type of lawyer that would take on any case. He wouldn't shy away from a case where other lawyers would.
When I say that he won a case and it was a big payout, we're talking millions and millions of dollars.
In the time period, June, July, and August, we had resolved several substantial personal injury cases. The total gross of all of these settlements was nearly $4 million. And in fact, Thursday, which would have been August 19, before the incident, one of those checks came in for $1,350,000, and Susan asked Christopher to take it to the bank.
It was a business that could have easily created enemies. And in fact, it did.
One of the cases John settled was a $100,000 case, I believe, against a woman. She had made threats against John that she was going to come by and shoot up his law firm.
She had a tremendous grudge. I was the worst thing that there could have been. She filed complaints with the Florida bar against me. She wanted me dead. She hated me.
Police are now considering the possibility that a vengeful killer stalked and shot John Sutton and his wife over a lawsuit.
If someone is attacked and the first thing you do is run their name, and there's already been someone documented that they have been threatening to cause them harm, of course you're going to take that seriously.
As they probe deeper into the death threat, the detectives uncover a disturbing piece of information.
One of the things that we learned is that a neighbor said that they heard a boat crank up sometime around 10:30 and take off behind John Sutton's house at a high rate of speed.
The Sutton home backed up to a very large canal, and that particular witness said that around that time she had observed this boat speeding away.
And we learned later that she owned that type of boat.
So one of the things we had to do was to verify where the boat was at the time of the murder. One of the detectives was tasked with finding that information out, and they were able to obtain video footage of her boat docked at the time of the murder in her slip.
It just did not fit that this boat may have been used to gain access to the Sutton property.
But as an investigative lead, we have to do the interview and make sure, or either rule her out or keep her in the investigation. We spoke to her. We didn't have any belief that she did that.
With the woman cleared, detectives turn back to Teddy Montoto. The ballistics report on his gun has finally landed on Cordero Stutz's desk.
When the results came in, it turned out that it was not the murder weapon.
But Teddy's not off the hook yet.
We are able to rule out that that's the weapon that was used in the murder, but that doesn't mean that it couldn't have been another 9mm.
So she presses him on what he's hiding.
Once we confronted Teddy with the fact that he had failed the polygraph, he quickly admitted to us that the reason why he failed it was because he and Susan were involved in a romantic relationship and had been for several years.
The confession offers up a whole new motive for the attack.
After he admits that he's involved in a relationship, you have someone who has the oldest of all reasons for murder, which is a love triangle.
A love triangle in murders is often a very overwhelming consideration because someone may feel, for example, that they've been wronged by somebody, that they were promised something. I'll leave my wife, I'll leave my husband for you. And this person's been kept on the hook for, in some cases, years. Police have to look at that because someone being jilted can be a very strong factor for murder.
Teddy says that the reason why he lied originally was because he wanted to protect Susan's honor. At this point, she is now dead. Nothing's gonna change that. And if he could have kept from her family, her children, and her husband that she was having an extramarital affair, then that was something he was gonna try to do. Teddy claimed that he was at home at the time of the shooting, that he was on the telephone with Susan. Using the phone records, we were able at that time to verify that he was in fact speaking to her from his residence, which was a couple of miles away from the scene of the crime. Teddy's ultimately ruled out as a suspect.
But the admission devastates his friend and colleague.
I felt that I had been betrayed. I felt that I had been tricked. I felt that I had been deceived left and right. And it was just one more problem on top of the stack of problems.
The suspect list is now down to 0, frustrating John beyond measure.
I was quite a difficult victim because I kept asking, where are the police reports? I want the police reports. What's going on? Who's doing what? What's the investigation? And they were not forthcoming.
So it has to be a totality when it comes to a homicide investigation. It's not just finding the person who committed the crime. It's saying, this person may have done it for A, B, C, and D reasons, but they didn't. It is a lot of work, but you absolutely have to be thorough.
Weeks into the investigation, that diligence pays off when the detectives notice something unusual.
I was assigned a task of collecting the phone numbers from the Suttons, John and Susan, Chris Sutton, Juliet Driscoll, Teddy Montano.
What stands out are the records belonging to Christopher Sutton.
It turned out there had been a pattern of phone calls for several weeks, up to leading to the night of the shooting.
162 times from July 19th through August 23rd.
The last of those calls comes close to midnight on the night of the murder, and it's a moment captured on camera.
He probably wasn't more than 50 to 100 feet outside the doors when he immediately gets on the phone.
What caught my attention when I observed the video is the fact that Chris, upon leaving the movie theater, is quickly reaching for his cell phone and dialing it and getting on the phone. And Juliet is actually a couple of feet away from him and kind of, lagging behind him. You would kind of think that after a movie like that with your fiance, you might be holding her hand and asking her what she thought of the movie, as opposed to getting on the phone and calling someone else.
We learned who he spoke to at that particular time was a guy by the name of Garrett Kopp.
He was young, somewhere between 19 and 20. We learned that he had a girlfriend who he had a child with. He had a past for breaking and entering, a misdemeanor past for dealing in drugs. He appeared to be going nowhere in life.
Kopp seems like a petty criminal, until they discover a detail about his most recent run-in with police.
We learned that he had been arrested by Homestead Police Department the day after the murder.
Homestead is probably 18 to 20 miles south of the city of Coral Gables.
And at that point, Art and I were, wow.
As an investigator, I don't believe in coincidences. Certainly in homicide investigations, there's no such thing as coincidence. There's a reason why things happen.
So I called down to the Homestead Police Department. I asked him, I said, please tell me it was some type of assault. He says it was. I said, please tell me a gun was involved. He says, well, there was a gun involved. I said, please tell me it's a Glock. He says, it was a Glock, 9mm. I said, now please tell me you have that weapon. He goes, I do.
Detective Larry Bellieu's gut tells him he may have located the murder weapon that killed Susan Sutton.
At that point, we retrieved that weapon from Homestead, and that weapon was submitted to our firearms examiner, who matched that weapon with the projectile evidence removed from Susan and from the crime scene, and learned that it was the gun used to kill Susan Sutton and shoot John Sutton.
Garrett Kopp now becomes bigger than life in our investigation, and now we've got to start figuring out what's going on with Garrett Kopp.
Despite this game-changing discovery, Bellieu is in no hurry to drag Kopp in for questioning.
We do know that we have the weapon. We have Garrett Kopp, who supposedly had the weapon, but we still wanted to build the case. If we brought Garrett Kopp in, he says, look, I got that weapon from a friend of mine. That's all he has to say, basically. We still don't know that he did it. So during this time, we're still building our investigation by talking with other people.
And the first person on their list is Christopher Sutton.
I was instructed to do just a routine interview. While talking to Chris about Garrett Kopp, he only identified him as a business associate. When asked, what do you mean by business associate, he said he had Garrett Kopp to his parents' house to do some oddball jobs. He didn't elaborate on what those oddball jobs were, except for one particular item, which was after the murder of the mother and the shooting of the father, that he had Garrett Kopp over to remove the carpet from the master bedroom where John Sutton was shot.
But when Kopp's name is floated to others, a very different picture emerges.
My assignment at that time was John. I'm able to interview John after he returns home from the hospital while he's recuperating. John said that Garrett and Christopher were very good friends, that they spent a lot of time together, they hung out together.
Garrett had been in the house before, yes. Probably a few times. I was aware that Garrett had dropped out of school. I was aware that Christopher hung out with him. I believed that Garrett wasn't working and was somewhat of a deadbeat, and this wasn't something that was a good relationship that Christopher was having. I was suspicious of Christopher doing drugs. However, I had nothing to prove it.
As police dig deeper, John's suspicions are confirmed.
We had learned that the two of them were talking about dealing in drugs, and in fact, Chris would give Garrett Kopp drugs to sell so he'd have some money in his pocket.
This introduces a whole new theory about the crime.
Garrett had been to the house. He had worked some odd jobs, so he knew the layout of the house. So as an investigator, ultimately, you have to consider what gain or benefit Garrett had. If it was Garrett who decided that, you know what, I know they've got stuff there to get money, or I know there's drugs there, I'm gonna go get the drugs. We have to consider the possibility that maybe Garrett Kopp did this all on his own.
He had a warrant for his arrest issued by the court for something else. And when he was arrested, I said, well, bring him to my office. And that's when we started interviewing him about the murder.
For the record, state your name. It's Garrett Kopp.
Well, during this whole interview, I'm gaining information that I'm going to be able to attack Garrett on.
Interviewing is an art, it's not a science. Again, it's experience. But when you interview someone, you're looking for a number of tells, if you think of poker for a minute, tells in a poker game. A really good interview can pick it off while he's conducting the interview.
Garrett tells me that the gun that they retrieved that night was not his weapon, that it was somebody else's, which I kind of thought he was going to tell me anyway.
Sometimes when people are starting to cover up, they all start telling little white lies, which, you know, in the end, the more little white lies you tell, eventually you're going to get tripped up.
Well, one of the things I asked Garrett was how close he was with Christopher.
How long have you known Chris Sutton?
About 6, 7 years.
How did you meet Christopher Sutton?
I lived in his neighborhood,
Where was that at?
Sunset Club,
And where's that located?
Sunset and 72nd Avenue.
And I said, do you speak with him on a daily basis? He says, no, not at all. Which we knew to be a lie because we had the phone records. He said he was with his girlfriend that particular night. His girlfriend was out waiting in the lobby. And I said, well, I'm going to be speaking with her right after I get done with you. He knew that he had been put in a corner, and now he's been caught in several lies. And at that point, finally, 3 or 4 or 5 hours later, he gave it up and said, look, he did do this. And I said, well, why? Why did you do this? Was John Sutton or Susan Sutton ever angry at you? Did they ever mistreat you? Did they ever do anything to hurt you? And he said, no. And that's when he revealed it. He said, Chris wanted me to do it, and he told me that if he wasn't gonna do it, Christopher was gonna kill him and his baby boy.
After a grueling interview, Garrett Kopp finally admits to pulling the trigger on both John and Susan Sutton.
Why did you shoot Christopher's parents?
Because my life was in Chris's hands. Told me he'd kill my son if I did not. And me.
But Kopp's revelation implicating the couple's son, Christopher, as the man behind the attack, adds a completely different dimension to the case.
So I know that Garrett Kopp is going to go to jail for first-degree murder. At that point, we have to start trying to build the case against Christopher.
Without alerting Chris, they must find another way of confirming Kopp's story.
And it had to be Juliet Driscoll, his girlfriend. They were close. They'd been dating for several years. She has to know about this. So we brought her in, and I interviewed her all day. We had to be there 10, 11 hours. And she kept denying. I don't know anything about the murder. Christopher never speaks to me about anything. So I had to find some kind of way to get to her. And I said, you know what? She was close to Susan. And I brought that fact up. I said, Susan was good to you. She was like a mother to you. I can't believe you're just allowing this to happen. That family, the whole family was good to you. They gave you a job. And I saw a tear come out of her eye. And I knew that I had her. And at that point, she began to tell me what she knew about Christopher. Chris hated his parents for sending him to the behavioral school and really wanted to do harm to them.
Juliet admits that when he would get very angry, he would make statements like that he wanted to kill them, that they deserved to die.
But we still didn't know why, because this was several years prior. What triggered this now? But then we realized Teddy and John had just settled those multi-million-dollar lawsuits, and Christopher knew about it, and Christopher actually put the money in the bank. He wanted the money. It came down to the hatred, and he just wanted their money. So now I had enough to get an arrest warrant for Christopher Sutton.
After tracking Chris down, he is brought in to face Detective Bellew.
I introduced myself to him. I said, two things are gonna happen today. I'm gonna go home tonight, and you're gonna go to jail for murder. There's not anything stopping that. I said, before you tell me anything though, understand this. I said, I've done my homework. I said, I got a sworn statement from Juliet Driscoll, and he said he wanted to see it. Well, he read certain parts of the statement and put his head down on the table and says, and started crying.
Christopher Sutton is charged with the first-degree murder of his mother and the attempted murder of his father.
Do I feel betrayed, tricked? Absolutely. Does my head hurt now because I got bullets in it? Absolutely. It was cold-blooded murder. There are some things that are temporary and come and go. This is permanent. This doesn't go away.
The 24-hour timeline developed by the detectives reveals exactly how Chris masterminded the plot to kill his own parents.
The story is that Christopher gets a gun, gives it to Garrett, tells him how to get into the house, told him where his parents would be, the fact that his parents would be in 2 separate bedrooms, and exactly where to go to the back of the house and where to do the shooting. The night of the shooting, the family gets together for a celebratory dinner around 7 p.m. at the house. Chris and Juliet are there. Susan and John are there. Teddy Montoto is there as well. They have a nice dinner. They cut a cake for her birthday. Around 9 p.m., Juliet and Christopher leave for this movie. Teddy Montoto leaves the house around 9:30 p.m. And around 10 p.m., both John and Susan retire to their respective bedrooms for the evening. Now, we know that Teddy gets on the telephone with Susan shortly thereafter. They're actually on the phone. He's on his landline, and she's on his cell phone. During that time, we have Garrett Cobb enter the house in the rear sliding glass door, walks from one end of the house all the way around to the other end, and confronts each of them in the bedroom, and he shoots them. He shoots Susan multiple times as she pulls a blanket over her. He shoots John multiple times, striking him up to twice in the face. He leaves John for dead, and he has in fact killed Susan right there on the scene. Shortly thereafter, Christopher and Garrett are on the telephone with each other for Garrett to report to Chris that he has in fact carried out the murder. The timeline it's very important. I think that any reasonable person can look at that timeline and understand how it went from point A to point Z.
We had done our homework. We had turned over every stone and was able to present all these facts beyond a reasonable doubt to this jury on why Chris Sutton was involved in his parents' murder.
In exchange for his testimony, Garrett Kopp receives a sentence of 30 years. Christopher Sutton never admits to his involvement. He is sentenced to life.
There's no doubt in my mind that Christopher orchestrated this for his own means. He saw that he had a great chance for a free ride and to do whatever he wanted whenever he wanted to do it. I have not spoken to him since the trial. He needs to be secured and not ever considered for parole. At this point, I have to look forward, not backward. And therefore, I compartmentalize it. I put it in the background. I know it's there. I bring it up too often. Of course, you always question, what else could I have done? What else could I have done? There's nothing else I could have done.
Christopher Sutton had been looking for someone to kill his parents for years, and he found that someone in Garrett Kopp.
The house was not ransacked. It was not forcibly entered. The doors were locked.
A brutal killing.
It was apparent right then and there that we were dealing with something different.
A housewife, a former medical professional. She was involved in her local community.
A very devoted mother of a little boy.
Who had the motive to kill this lady?
A dark mystery with multiple suspects.
You have 4 and 5 different pieces of DNA, all from different people?
The person that claimed that they were a soldier of God, soldier of death.
It was just bizarre.
The truth will be revealed.
I would not know how to classify it other than an assassination.
Every day in North America, dozens of people are murdered. The key to solving the toughest of these homicides lies in the final 24 hours of the victim's life. To crack the case, detectives must reconstruct that critical timeline. The minutes and hours containing evidence that can help unlock the mystery and catch the killer. The sleepy town of Williamsport, Pennsylvania, nestled in a lush valley, surrounded by forest.
Williamsport has a long history, tradition. You go back to the lumber barons, and of course, Little League Baseball started here. It's just a nice place to grow up, and you usually don't fear for your safety.
But one January morning, a grim discovery shatters that serenity.
We received a call from 911 indicating that a woman had been found in her residence. A friend, Dwayne Van Fleet, had gone to try to locate her. He found that the residence was locked. There was no answer at any of the doors. He looked through a window and observed the victim on the kitchen floor. The victim's name was Miriam Ellis. It was obvious that she was deceased.
She's killed based on a gunshot to her back in the area of her heart.
It's up to state troopers William Holmes and Scott Henry to find her killer. The first step is questioning the man who made the 911 call.
One of the things you do first off the bat is try to find out about as much about the victim and their life as you can.
Mr. Van Fleet was one that was able to provide a fair amount of information to us.
Miriam Ellis was a housewife, a former medical professional. She was involved in her local community, and part of the reason they found her that day was she didn't show up to teach Sunday school.
She was an extremely good person, very devoted mother of a little boy.
She had a certain amount of stature, and a lot of people knew her.
One of the things that I recall with talking to him was she had no enemies. She had no enemies. Everyone got along with her.
Who would have a motive to do this to a middle-aged Sunday school teacher in Pennsylvania?
Investigators need to unlock every detail of Miriam's last 24 hours. But there's one key problem.
In any murder investigation, it becomes important to try to establish the time of death. A lot of times that's established with eyewitnesses. Somebody sees the crime occur. However, in this case, there were no eyewitnesses.
They look to Miriam herself for an approximate time of death.
The body can tell many tales. How long it's been there, rigor mortis, lividity, aid in determining, at least initially, how long this person's been deceased. And these are things that we are trained to look at.
There was some blood on her body. It appeared that she had laid there for a while. In canvassing the area, we couldn't find anybody that had seen her after 5 o'clock Friday evening, the 15th.
Without more information, investigators can only determine a wide window for the murder, placing it sometime late Friday night. They turn to the crime scene, looking for clues about the killer.
The house was not disheveled, it was not ransacked, it was not forcibly entered. The doors were locked. All the exterior doors were locked to the residence, the garage. There was a handset for a telephone within close proximity to her hand.
As detectives subpoena her phone records, they face an uphill battle. A much-loved mother, killed within her locked house. Then, a keen eye spots a critical clue.
We noticed a bullet hole in the window at that time.
It was a double-pane exterior window. It was located directly above the kitchen sink.
It was apparent that the shot had come from the outside.
Our theory at that point was that, she was leaning, standing up against the kitchen sink, talking on the telephone when the round was fired that struck and killed her.
For a gunshot to be fired outside of a residence through a window, striking somebody, killing them, was something that I had not seen before.
This was in a residential neighborhood. There was no hunting season that was in effect. This was clearly not a hunting accident.
I would not know how to classify it as other than an assassination.
Somebody deliberately chose to set up, lie in wait, and assassinate Miriam Ellis, sniper style, through her kitchen window.
It was shocking because this woman was murdered in her own home, and it doesn't happen that way.
That single shot is now the only lead.
When the investigators then traced trajectory of the shot back, it took them back to a stream bed in behind Miriam Ellis's house.
And then, as we looked a little further, our forensics team was able to find footprints.
They came from a Reebok full-tilt basketball shoe, and that was the tread pattern. Size 14, they were positioned in a way where someone took up a shooting position alongside a tree that was directly back from Miriam's kitchen window. The investigators also found a cigarette butt in the area where the shot had been taken.
As they looked further, they were able to find what turned out to be a homemade silencer.
Very rare, at least in my career, did you find a silencer. It was apparent right then and there that we were dealing with something different.
This establishes how Miriam Ellis was shot, but the mystery of who did it and why remains.
For an execution-style killing, you have to have it planned. You have to have it planned in advance. Either the person wanting someone dead has to retain someone to do the crime, or they have to do it themselves and try to cover up their tracks.
Somebody has taken great steps, great pains to plan out and execute this murder. It was not like Miriam was involved in some type of criminal enterprise, or that she was doing some kind of risky behavior where she was putting herself in harm's way. She was at home on a Friday night.
Was she concerned or afraid for her life? What was going on in the last 24? Was she hiding? Did she say anything to anybody? Who saw her come home? These are all factors that become critical to helping you investigate the case.
Some of those questions may soon be answered.
As the investigators were processing the scene, Dr. Richard Ellis showed up.
Dr. Richard Ellis was a heart surgeon here in the Williamsport Hospital. He was well known, and a lot of people called him a lifesaver.
When a woman's murdered in her home, you must look at the husband first. They're the closest to the deceased. They're the ones that ought to be able to give you the most information.
It's difficult to talk with grieving family members about this, but by the same token, they want to know, and they want to help, and therefore they'll do anything they can.
Dr. Ellis tells investigators he last saw Miriam when he stopped by the house 2 days earlier, on Friday at 5 p.m.
He was going to visit his family, which was down in the Chester County area of Pennsylvania.
Detectives then learn the couple had recently separated after being married for 8 years.
Miriam Ellis had moved out of the family residence. Primary custody of their son, Richie Ellis, a 5-year-old, was with Miriam Ellis, and her husband had visitation time with Richie every other weekend. The fact that they were going through this divorce established a potential motive.
You have to look at, how was their relationship? Were they happy? Were they unhappy? Were there any public instances of, fights? That type of thing. You have to look at all of those variables.
Was it an argument that went bad? Well, not in this case. Not when you have a sniper fire.
Beyond the facts, a seasoned detective would be looking for tells. Everyone has them. Everyone has some sort of give, if you will. Detectives are trained to recognize all of that.
As they probe further, the doctor's behavior seems off.
One of the first things he said, after being told that Miriam was dead, he asked what evidence was found, which the investigators thought was odd.
It seemed kind of a strange question for somebody to ask at that point.
He then makes an interesting admission.
He told us he was no stranger to firearms. He had a hunting background and that he had owned some firearms, which a lot of people in this area do. That's not a big deal. But we wanted to take a look and see what he had and if it related to, the crime scene at all.
We were able to determine that bullet that killed her was a .22, which gave us information on what type of weapon to look for.
And in fact, they did obtain and take from Dr. Ellis numerous .22 caliber class rifles.
This puts Miriam's former partner front and center.
Love can very easily turn into hate, and that hate can grow and grow and grow until you can't think about anything else other than that person who you hate being dead.
Dr. Richard Ellis has become the first suspect in his wife's murder. While his guns are sent for testing, investigators scrutinize his life.
He did, of course, as a cardiothoracic surgeon, make a very good living financially. He was paying quite a sum of money in child support per month. I believe the total was somewhere in the area of $12,000.
That was the largest support order that had ever been entered in Lycoming County history.
Killing somebody for money is not uncommon. In fact, it's the opposite. You're either killing somebody for money or you're killing somebody for love. Those are the two main reasons anybody ends up dead.
With an age-old motive for murder, investigators press the doctor for details on where he was when Miriam was shot.
Dr. Ellis was supposed to pick Richie up for the weekend visitation on Friday evening.
Dr. Ellis decided to spend the weekend with his sister, 2.5 hours away in Honeybrook, Pennsylvania. He can substantiate the start of his journey through a witness, Nancy Mitch.
It was a friend of Miriam's that had stopped by to visit, to speak for a few minutes, chit-chatting.
Nancy Mitch was able to explain to investigators that she was with Miriam to be present during the exchange when Miriam transferred their son Richie to Dr. Richard Ellis for the weekend.
Dr. Ellis was supposed to pick Richie up on Friday evening at 4 o'clock. We had learned from Nancy that he was a little late getting there. He picked up his son at Miriam's residence approximately 5 o'clock, so we knew he left the residence with his son. Nancy had left and Miriam seemed to be okay.
So we could last verify that Miriam was alive around 6 p.m. on Friday, January 15th.
Dr. Ellis says he then made a quick pit stop before heading to his sister's.
They had gone home to his house first.
He had left for southeastern Pennsylvania approximately 9:30 in the evening with his son.
He said they drove to Lewisburg and stopped at a fast food restaurant.
He had indicated that that stop was sometime around 10 p.m. The weather was bad that evening, and he called his sister around 11:24 p.m. and indicated that he was going to stop, and him and Richie were going to spend the night in the Harrisburg area.
Nancy has confirmed one piece of Dr. Ellis's alibi. Detectives must now determine if the rest of his information is accurate.
They could verify the cell phone call to his sister on the phone records. And we know that Dr. Ellis had checked in at 12:57 a.m. at a hotel in the Harrisburg area. That gives him a clear check-in time, a receipt for when he's there, so he has corroboration for his whereabouts.
Dr. Ellis's story seems to hold up, but investigators also check him against the physical evidence.
The center of the silencer had holes that were drilled through it. That was used to affix the silencer to the murder weapon. None of his guns had such a thing. There was nothing that could establish the murder weapon, that it was Dr. Ellis's gun. In addition, there was some DNA that was found on hairs inside the silencer, and there was DNA found in a cigarette butt. Ultimately, the DNA that was tested did not match Dr. Richard Ellis.
According to the evidence, Dr. Ellis was nowhere near the house at the time of the murder. But as they press for more information, he makes another admission.
Dr. Ellis was having an affair.
He had developed a romantic relationship with a coworker who he worked with at the Williamsport Hospital. And that may have led in part to the separation.
It seemed like very similar circumstances to how he met Miriam. He started working with her. They developed this relationship and got married. And then it was kind of the same way with Katie. She actually took Miriam's job and then ended up a relationship.
It's one of the oldest crimes in the books, so to speak, is love triangle murders. Perhaps as many as 15 or 20% of the ones I investigated involved a love triangle of some kind.
The other woman, Katie Suarez, potentially would have a motive to kill Miriam. She could have wanted Dr. Ellis all for herself and to get Miriam out of the picture to eliminate the chance that Dr. Ellis would go back with his wife.
Jealousy is an amazing thing because jealousy often leads to obsession, and obsession is what drives people to commit horrific acts.
But there's more at stake than just their relationship.
Between a potential divorce and the alimony, there was a lot of money involved there. There's a big financial issue. If Miriam left the picture all of a sudden, she would reap the benefits of anything that he would gain.
Detectives must determine where Richard's new girlfriend was when Miriam was killed.
Katie Suarez was somebody that he would have spent a lot of his free time with and that would be around him, but if he was going to travel out of town to visit his family, that would give her the opportunity to commit the crime.
They quickly track Katie down.
We learned that she was definitely out of town visiting relatives in another state at the time that Miriam was murdered. No way she could have done it, not possible. As we continue with the investigation, we can't find anybody else that has any motive to have this lady killed.
Then, the assassin reaches out to them.
There were these letters sent to the police station.
The first anonymous letter, right off the bat, claimed that the predator was responsible for killing Miriam Ellis.
I had been involved in, oh gosh, probably hundreds, if not thousands, of criminal prosecutions. I'd never had a case with an anonymous letter. I mean, you see it on TV, but it's not something that really happens.
In a sensational twist, a self-professed killer writes a letter to police.
There was a lot of thoughts that go through your mind. You're thinking, is this somebody that's just making this up? Somebody that just saw the case in the news and was sending these letters out and they had nothing to do with it?
The person that claimed that they were a soldier of God, soldier of equality, soldier of death, they claimed that the victim was racist and they wanted to harvest the racist people in this town.
I remember it being very explicit about Miriam being wicked. And I believe there's certainly some racist comments that were included in the letter itself.
It didn't make any sense. There was nothing that we had that supported that accusation at all. It was just bizarre. It was very strange.
While the murderer seems to be reaching out, they've also gone to great lengths to obscure their identity.
The letters were tested for fingerprints. There weren't any.
They were handwritten in block printing in pencil.
This was in such a way that you wouldn't be able to tell how that person typically writes. So you couldn't make a comparison later at trial if you wanted to.
As investigators puzzle over the letter and its contents, another one arrives.
The second one, it had a different tone. It was indicative that the writer had a superior intellect and we didn't. It smacked of arrogance.
This second letter also points investigators towards a new suspect.
The author described himself as having advanced degrees, having many advanced degrees.
It indicated to us that possibly an associate of Dr. Ellis's may be the person that did it or the person that wrote the letter.
He's talking about Dr. Zama. He was very good friends with Mrs. Ellis. He and Dr. Ellis were partners.
But again, Dr. Ellis was the chief of cardiothoracic surgery. That may have created some friction between the two of them.
They were the two cardiothoracic surgeons for Williamsport Hospital.
The writer claimed that they were a superior intellect, that they spoke 5 different languages or several different languages, which Dr. Zama did.
Dr. Zama happened to be African American. In fact, he was probably one of the few African American people that were in the Ellis's kind of inner circle of friends. He happened to be a tall guy that probably had pretty large feet, potentially size 14. He was certainly somebody that the investigators had to look at now as a result of the letters.
Dr. Zama is brought in for questioning.
The investigators actually showed the letters to Dr. Zama. They asked, who's this describing? And he indicated that it looked like the letters were describing him.
But he is adamant he played no part in Miriam's death and never wrote the letters.
Dr. Zama got along with Miriam, and they were friends.
She was the wife of a colleague, and that was as far as their relationship went.
He also claimed to have been with friends during the window of time in which Miriam was murdered.
The investigators checked out Dr. Zama's alibi for the evening of the 15th. They confirmed that he had an airtight alibi. The anonymous letters were also processed for DNA.
There was a black hair in the glued flap of the envelope that was sticking out like a sore thumb.
The DNA was tested and it didn't match Dr. Zama, but it didn't match any other of the samples of DNA collected in the case either.
The investigators now believe they're being played.
Whoever did these letters was taking all these steps to conceal their identity. They were taking the steps to make sure that they weren't using saliva to lick the glue flap or to lick the stamp. But here this large hair was predominantly placed right there in the glue flap for someone to find. It was really when that happened that I personally really started to think that there was a lot of planting of evidence going on here. The silencer with additional DNA, a cigarette butt with DNA. When it didn't match each other, it became apparent it was being planted. Now you have 4 and 5 different pieces of DNA, all from different people? Were there 5 people involved in this crime? No.
Many steps were taken to execute this plan. At the end of the day, you have to think either that he's just a psychopath or that he was really enjoying the whole process and didn't want it to stop.
The problem for troopers Holmes and Henry is that this realization puts them no closer to catching Miriam's killer.
I think we entered a time that we were, kind of felt like we were spinning our wheels. We were frustrated because of some of the things that had been occurring.
You want to do the right job, you want to do it correctly, you get one shot at it, and you don't want to mess up. If you do, then that's the one shot you get.
Then, When a subpoena they'd been waiting for since day one is approved, it unlocks a key piece of the puzzle.
There was a handset for a telephone within close proximity to our hand.
The investigators got the phone records for Miriam.
We came to find out that there was a friend that she had been speaking to on the telephone Friday evening that had actually called her.
She indicated that she heard the sound of glass breaking during the phone call, and she heard Miriam say, "Oh my God," and then didn't hear anything else. At that time, she hung up the phone. She called back, and she got a busy signal. And then she just assumed that they had gotten cut off, and now Miriam was talking to somebody else on the phone.
This new information gives investigators something they'd been missing: an exact time of death.
The conversation ended at 10:37 p.m.
So we could tell that that call had ended the moment we believe Miriam was shot.
The time of death was everything.
Armed with the time of death of exactly 10:37 p.m., detectives recheck the alibis of all persons of interest. The only one that doesn't add up belongs to Dr. Ellis.
Initially, he said that he had been in the Williamsport area, and he was already south on Route 15 by 10 p.m.
They said they stopped to get a bite at a restaurant.
If in fact he was there at around 10 o'clock, he could not have committed the crime. On the surface, it looked like it checked out, but they really couldn't verify that he was actually there at that 10 p.m. time frame.
That made his alibi look a little shaky at that point.
A well-planned or perfectly planned murder, you generally solve through the small details within the case. Small detail will include, to a great degree, timing. The timeline becomes critical in most cases, if not all cases.
Investigators break down every detail of Dr. Ellis' story.
They traveled south on Route 15, and he made a call to his sister at 11:24.
He had called to tell her that they were going to have to stop and stay at a hotel.
The only real hard time they could verify was the cell phone call to his sister.
They use this information to determine the closest point Dr. Ellis could have been from Miriam's house when he made the call.
We knew the route he had taken that evening because he had told us. We knew he was in a certain radius from the cell phone tower that his call came from, that his call bounced off of that cell phone tower.
Once we contacted the cell phone company and got the coverage maps,
we were able to determine approximately where that phone call was made in relation to the crime scene and in relation to the hotel.
And we found that he could have been much farther north on Route 15 than he had indicated.
The question investigators now have to answer is whether Dr. Ellis could have taken the shot at 10:37, made the call to his sister at 11:24, and still made it to the hotel for 1 a.m.
We wanted to drive the route under those same conditions. We checked that night, were there any accidents that would have delayed traffic? Of course, the weather was bad. Was there a road closure? We actually even wore some sneakers that were somewhat similar to the ones that were worn that night. Went from the scene on foot, followed that dry stream bed to a vehicle, and drove to the location within the area he could have made a call from that night on his cell phone, and we found out that it was possible to do that.
Just the fact that they could recreate the timeline and it worked. It blew everyone away.
All the dots have to be connected. You have to go with what may seem to detectives initially to be something relatively trivial can become extremely important as the investigation unfolds.
Dr. Richard Ellis is now the only suspect without an alibi. Next, investigators need to find a way to tie him to the murder itself.
Two young men were looking for minnows in one of our local creeks, and while doing this, they come upon a modified rifle.
They thought it looked strange, or for whatever reason, they picked it up, called the police. It's a cut-off barrel. It's a cut-off stock. It's got a scope on it. It's not something you might find every day.
The bolt from the gun had been removed and discarded. Any of the markings on the gun had been drilled out of them to hide the serial numbers. But there was a clip in the gun, so they could actually see that the caliber of that gun was a .22. This was consistent with the bullet that had murdered Miriam.
Most intriguing of all, however, is where it was found.
The partial rifle was located within close proximity to the route that Dr. Ellis told us he traveled the night at the homicide.
Using the silencer recovered from the scene, they have a way to determine if this rare gun is the murder weapon.
On the top of the barrel, there was a screw that had been screwed in and added to it that would had to have been done to the gun to accept the silencer. So when you took the components of the silencer and you slid them over the barrel of the gun and turned it, it fit.
There was a stir in the crime room. You knew that this was the weapon we had been looking for.
Now the question becomes tying that gun to the perpetrator.
I was tasked with running down the particulars of the weapon. That was a Savage Model 23 rifle. Trooper Holmes made a trip down to speak to Dr. Ellis's family.
He learns that Dr. Ellis had inherited his father's guns, and his Aunt Jean is the only person left who knows about them.
She had brought out a photo album and was leafing through it, showing the investigators some old photos. One of the photos she flipped to was a black and white photo of her brother posing with a rifle in one hand and a dead groundhog in the other.
When he brought that photograph back, we were able to determine that that was a Savage Model 23D.
The more coincidences that pile up, the less chance that it actually is a coincidence. You can plan your murder out down to the T, but you can never rule out the fact that a fisherman walking in the Pennsylvania woods is going to step on a gun that was willed to you by your father.
We had the connection.
Investigators have recovered the weapon they believe Richard Ellis used to kill his estranged wife, Miriam. The challenge now will be to secure a conviction despite the maze of conflicting forensic evidence.
It was very frustrating for the case because even though by this time we had our belief that, Dr. Ellis may be involved, as a prosecutor, I know this is going to be an extremely difficult case to win in front of a jury because I've got multiple pieces of DNA that don't match the accused.
You can only convict if the only logical inference that can be drawn is the person's guilt. And so if there's an alternate suspect who doesn't have an alibi, that's your reasonable doubt.
So we went back to the area where the gun was found, and we started looking and got lucky again. We found a set of shoes up there, athletic shoes.
They were determined to be the same size as the footprints from the scene. They were determined to be the same tread pattern, so they were the same shoe that was used to make the imprints.
You knew when you saw those. Those were the shoes that had taken the killer in and taken the killer out.
They must now prove the shoes were worn by Richard Ellis.
We still had the issue that they're a size 14 and he wears a size 10. And of course, it would have been very possible for somebody with a size 10 shoe to wear a 14.
They are sent to the lab for forensic testing.
They found a hair on one of the tongues of one of the sneakers. They did DNA testing on that, and that came back to not match Dr. Ellis.
But if the investigators are right, Dr. Ellis wasn't the only person at the scene that night.
We believe that somehow he drugged his son, Richie, and he was asleep in the car.
Obviously, the son didn't have those shoes on, but transfer theory is if you leave a room or enter it, you're picking up evidence or you're leaving evidence, be it hair or fibers, anything to that effect. So there would explanation of how that hair could have got there.
We tested that against Richie Ellis, Dr. Ellis' son, and we got a mitochondrial match to that. The link came down to a hair from a 5-year-old.
Richard Ellis planned to use false DNA to throw the police off his track. But in the end, his son's DNA links him to the murder.
You have a theory. You start with a theory in a homicide investigation or any criminal case. We had our theory in this case. And this evidence, the picture, this evidence from the sneaker, this evidence from the bullet in the magazine of the rifle. All of these things corresponded with our thoughts, our theory. They supported it. And it's physical evidence. That's powerful stuff. It doesn't lie.
As Ellis is arrested for the murder of his estranged wife, investigators are left with the chilling knowledge of how he killed her.
Dr. Ellis had prepared some time in advance to commit this murder. He would have had to have done that because the gun had to be modified, the silencer had to be created and fabricated, all which would have taken a substantial amount of time. He knew that if he was going to kill Miriam, he didn't want his son to be present to find her body, so it had to be on a weekend that Dr. Ellis had custody of his son. This was the weekend when all those stars aligned and gave him the opportunity to commit the crime.
The plan became reality on Friday at 5 p.m. when he picked up his son from Miriam. A few hours later, the doctor returned.
Dr. Ellis parked the car with Richie asleep or drugged, went through the stream bed, got up to a point where he was in position behind Miriam Ellis's kitchen window. And he would have had to have waited there until Miriam would have came into the kitchen and stood in a position that gave him a shot there. If she was anywhere else in the house, he couldn't shoot her. He could only shoot her when she was in that kitchen in front of that window. And at 10:37 p.m., she was in there, was on the phone, and she presented the shot to him, and that's when he killed her. He placed the evidence there in the scene, the cigarette butt, arranged that in a position to be found, and then he would have left the scene, leaving those size 14 tracks. Then he would have gone back to the car with his son and traveled south.
He drove to the first remote place that he could get rid of evidence. He threw out the gun, he threw out the shoes, he returned to the road and continued traveling.
He made a call to his sister at 11:24. Presumably, he's doing this knowing that the records will show up and that, that can assist him in his alibi. But what it actually showed is that he could have committed the offense.
When you took this and you put it in a timeline perspective, that was key.
Richard Ellis is charged with first-degree murder.
When Dr. Ellis was arrested, they found an unfinished manuscript of a book. And the title of the book was Heart Shot, Murder of the Doctor's Wife. And the author was Dr. Richard Ellis. And it goes through and it basically documents the murder of Miriam Ellis from the perspective of the killer. And the thing that I remember the most, and I'll never forget really, is that the book describes the killer's emotion at the time. And it described the killer as having an orgasmic catharsis at the time of the murder.
Despite the evidence, Ellis pleads innocent to the charge. But the jury sees things differently.
After a trial in 2004, Dr. Ellis was convicted of first-degree murder and sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole.
This is just the bad luck if you're him, or the good luck if you're the police. But without that firearm, he would not have been convicted of that crime.
Dr. Ellis was an intelligent man who thought he was probably smarter than he was.
He didn't want his wife to have all his money, and he thought he could get away with it.
I don't know what it was that caused this case to get under our skin, other than that it was something that could happen to any of us. It was the life any of us could have been leading.
We had a little boy here. Very tragic. He was just a little guy who no longer had his mother, and ultimately he lost his father in this.
To do that to your son, to carry out this murder, is just beyond belief.
There's usually not a lot left of a person once they're shot with a shotgun.
A brutal killing.
Blood was everywhere. The carnage, the just brutality. That was the worst scene that I've seen.
A dark mystery with multiple suspects.
And this case had all the classic elements of sex, money, and even drugs.
That was the killer calling and telling them that the job is done.
He needed to go in there and eliminate these problems in his life so he could have what he always wanted.
I can protect you if you tell me the truth.
I would not lie to you about a murder.
The truth will be revealed.
She knew that she was playing with fire. That's when the fuse was lit.
Every day in North America, dozens of people are murdered. The key to solving the toughest of these homicides lies in the final 24 hours of the victim's life. To crack the case, detectives must reconstruct that critical timeline. The minutes and hours containing evidence that can help unlock the mystery and catch the killer. Springfield, Georgia, personifies the small-town charm of the South.
Springfield is the county seat of Effingham County. It's a quiet little community. It's rural, a lot of farmland.
It only has 2 red lights. That's how small it is. Just a few thousand people.
One hot summer night, violence erupts at one of the county's most respected homes.
In the early morning hours, Effingham Dispatch received a call from a female.
911.
Help, please.
Can I help you? What's wrong?
I'm shot.
You're shot.
Yes.
How did you get shot, ma'am?
I don't know.
It was difficult to make out what she was trying to tell them, but they did pick out a couple of words.
Husband shot too.
Your husband shot too?
Yes.
Who else is in the house with you?
Son?
Your son?
Yes.
Did he get shot too, or you don't know?
I don't know.
Do you know who shot you?
No.
Okay, just stay with me, honey. I got somebody coming to you. Just stay with me, okay?
Upon arrival, deputies locate 58-year-old Linda Height.
When the first responders arrived, they could not believe Linda was even alive. She had taken a shirt and wrapped it around her lower jaw to help stem the flow of blood.
The emergency medical services, they arrived on scene and transported her to a local hospital to immediately get her help. The other two individuals in the house, one was Linda's husband, Philip, and her son, Carrie. Both of them had sustained gunshot wounds to the head. It was obvious that no intervention would have saved them.
Investigator Eric Reiner and Assistant District Attorney Michael Muldrew locked down the scene alongside Effingham County Sheriffs.
We knew that this was going to be a very difficult case, that it is going to take tremendous man-hours. The sheriff, knowing that, assessed the situation and called in help, and he called in the GBI, the Georgia Bureau of Investigations.
Special Agent Eugene Howard is assigned as the lead.
When I approached the scene and drove onto the road where the Heights family lived, the first thing I realized was the remoteness of the location. It was in a rural location, family dwelling down a dirt road. It wasn't in a public area. Inside the home, I noticed the overwhelming smell of gasoline. We immediately realized that the person who did this was gonna try to set the house on fire, to try to cover up the evidence.
But the crime scene remains intact.
It appeared that the son, Carrie, was shot first. Carrie was in the bedroom to the left. He was shot at close range, and he was shot with what appeared to be a shotgun. You walked down the hallway and you were able to see the father, Philip Height. It appeared that Philip raised up in his bed as a result of hearing the gunshot. Then Philip was shot. Immediately to the right, you see that there was a gunshot through the bathroom door where Linda was shot at.
Shotguns are destructive. They're large barrels, and there's a lot of different metal pellets that come out. There's usually not a lot left of a person once they're shot with a shotgun.
Blood was everywhere. That's, as of today, was the worst scene that I've seen. As far as the carnage, just brutality of the scene, and the sheer will for Linda to live. We wish we could have talked to her, but at that time she was in major surgery in an attempt to save her life.
To find the person who killed Philip Height and his son Carrie and left Linda for dead, investigators will need to reconstruct the last hours of the victims' lives.
What you start thinking about as an investigator is the victimology. Why or what caused this family to be brutally murdered and assaulted? Initially, and from the evidence, it appeared to be a robbery or a break-in. There's a big hunting community in Effingham, so it's not uncommon to have a shotgun. However, there was no shells found at the scene. No person who wanted to come in and rob and shoot had a reason to pick up the shotgun shells, especially if they were going to set the house on fire. This was different than a random burglary.
There was nothing taken from the house.
Stuff is still there, it's cash.
There were wallets, there was jewelry, there was money and money clips. Truly nothing had been disturbed.
Indication from the scene was that the person went in with the sole intent of killing every soul in the residence.
The apparent targeting of all 3 heights in one attack directs them to examine the family history.
Their family's been in this county since its foundation.
Philip Height was well known, extremely well respected. He was connected with a lot of the movers and shakers in South Georgia, and if you wanted to get a real estate deal done, you went to Philip Height.
Philip was the breadwinner. Linda was the homekeeper. She took care of the kids and was the traditional Southern belle and the matriarch. They had 3 sons, Carrie Height, the youngest, Chris Height, the middle child, and Craig Height, the oldest.
Carrie was his daddy's shadow. And he actually worked with him every day in their development company. In a lot of ways, there were 2 peas in a pod.
Carrie was also married to his high school sweetheart, Robin, with whom he had a boy and 2 girls.
They went to notify Robin at her home. They find her there with her children.
She was told about the murders. She was distraught.
Robin tells police Carrie went to his parents' house at approximately 4 p.m. the previous day and had called to say goodnight to the kids at 8:30.
The Heights held family higher than anything else. It was beyond devastating.
There's a lot of emotion in all of this, but your job is to solve the murder. Very difficult questions have to be asked. That's your job. It's not like you like to do it. You have to do it.
She stated that she didn't have any idea who could have done this.
Then she asked, had anyone talked to her brother-in-law yet? Referring to Craig.
Police locate Philip and Linda's eldest son.
Craig was actually living in a friend's hunting cabin, which was several miles away.
When we arrived, Craig was upset, just dismayed, grief.
He gave a statement. He said he had been at the hunting cabin and that he had gone there earlier in the evening and he had been there all night and that he had not found out about the murders until he was called well on up in the morning.
Investigators get their first real lead.
We found out that Philip's business was in dire straits. He was struggling at that point. Due to the downturn in the economy, a lot of real estate deals were going bust. There were foreclosures left and right.
Billions, if not trillions of dollars was lost in the 2008 financial crisis. Millionaires reduced to paupers. And that leads to a number of people having motive to commit murder.
One of the investigative tracks that would have had to have been investigated was whether money was owed to clients in the business that the father and the son ran.
They might appear successful from the outside, but as in many instances, looks can be deceiving.
Investigators discover the brutal attack on the Height family may be connected to the business Philip and his son Carrie ran together.
There had been some contentiousness between Philip and some of the other people that he worked with in development business and bankers. And we thought that somebody did this to get back at him somehow.
You must investigate creditors or persons that were involved in the business. Is it 10, 20, 30 million dollars at stake? People will do anything for money.
As they start their inquiry, they receive a tip.
This lady in Effingham County received a phone call, and she tells the sheriff that she had received it approximately the same time that she thought that the Height murders were being carried out. She could hardly hear them, but she could hear them say, "The deed is done."
This happened that night, and that's what made the person who received the call think, hey, this might have something to do with the case.
You cannot discount anything at that point. A lot of times, the leads that we get from the community actually result in some good information. So the first thing you do is you get phone records. We interviewed a lot of people that had conducted business with Philip. We searched his real estate business. We toted out boxes of records, searched through all those records. We could not come up with any credible information that would lead us to a motive for the crime. People argue, but it doesn't mean that they're going to kill you. Maybe he did have an exchange of words, but that was not a viable motive for murder.
Philip would not have made any decisions that would have jeopardized himself or his family. He just wasn't one of those type people. He wasn't dealing with the mob. He wasn't borrowing money from loan sharks. He was a hard businessman, but he was a businessman.
Police pore over phone records, finally locating their mystery caller.
It was just a random telephone call in the middle of the night for someone that was doing some repair work at a restaurant. That person called and said, hey, the job is done, and they called the wrong number. It just proved to be just a random telephone call, but it had to be investigated.
They turn their focus to the middle son.
Chris was a successful builder and lived close by Linda and Philip and was a real integral part of the family. He was devastated beyond belief.
Chris tells investigators he was at his parents' house at 4 p.m. when Carrie first arrived.
Chris was in a hurry to get home, feed his children, bathe his children, get ready for their school the next day.
He reported that he was home with his wife that entire night, which was confirmed by his wife.
But Chris does have an idea about where they should go next.
Chris mentioned his father saying to him that he reported something to the local law enforcement.
There was a meth addict down the road that was manufacturing methamphetamine.
Philip called law enforcement and said, hey, this guy is selling meth in our neck of the woods.
He actually went to prison for that.
They thought that maybe this particular person had something to do with the death of Philip and Carrie Height.
Police learn the man, Peter Hoffman, served close to 3 years for possessing and manufacturing methamphetamine.
Crystal meth is a huge problem in the southern United States. And people who have a drug trafficking network will do anything to keep that network. And if you're a crystal meth dealer, you're a bad person, capable of terrible acts. And if you go to jail because somebody ratted you out, and you sit in jail and you stew and stew, in this case, it's entirely plausible that the father had a target on his back.
They determine Hoffman lives just over a mile from the Height home.
You have to track this down You can collect all this evidence, but until you confront that person, you don't really know how it fits together. You knock on the door, you talk to the guy, and you do an interview.
Hoffman claims he was nowhere near the Haight house that evening.
We've all done this for many years, so we get a feeling on whether or not someone is being honest. You know, you can tell if something's off. You speak with them and question them about the evidence that you've collected, and you look at the reaction, and it kind of helps you synthesize this evidence to see if it's actually something that you can use that points to the guilt or innocence of the person. And in that particular case, did not pan out.
It was a very tantalizing rumor, but there was absolutely no evidence that this guy had any ill will towards the Heights when he got out.
Investigators turned back to the scene for more clues.
We noticed that there was a key in the door, and it was a true deadbolt, which means it's keyed on both sides.
Through the family, they learn of a backup key used only for emergencies.
Only a handful of people knew about this secret key that allowed access to the house. It was kept in a utility room off the carport in a special little notch above the door, and it would not be something that even a trained burglar would normally find.
When the garage is searched, that key is missing.
So we knew that that was the key from the secret hiding place.
It would lead me right away as an investigator to believe this was some form of what we'll call an inside job.
Since we had such a small number of people that knew about the key, it had to be somebody that was closely associated with this family and that actually had the intent to commit an execution.
They press the family to identify anyone with knowledge of the key. One name stands out.
There was another particular person that came in interest, and that was John Henry, Robin Heist's brother. It was mentioned to us that, well, John Henry goes onto the property all the time, and he would know where the key was at. John Henry was mentioned by the family because he had personal problems.
And so you have a person of interest who has access to the deceased house. You have to now track the suspect's movements in those 24 hours to figure out whether or not this is the person who did it.
Police have identified family friend John Henry as a person of interest in the Haight murders.
We found out that he was a very, very close friend of Carrie Haight. Carrie got him a lot of jobs. He was a handyman.
This friendship makes Henry's potential motive for murder unclear.
Most murders are committed between people who know each other, and it usually comes down to a factor involving the relationship itself. In these cases where that person either orchestrated or committed the murder, identifying motive, it's not so easy for the detective. You can't have that tunnel vision. You still have to step back and investigate the whole case.
They track down John Henry at his home.
He claimed that he was actually in Charleston, South Carolina for the 1-year anniversary of his marriage, and said they were staying at a nice hotel about 2.5 hours away from Springfield, Georgia.
If he's got an alibi, then typically you tell the police right away you've got an alibi and you provide alibi evidence.
We went to the hotel that he stayed at, picked up information from there, verifying that he was there. John Henry absolutely loved Carrie Haight. After looking into his alibi, learning about his close relationship with Carrie Height, just wouldn't have been possible for him to have committed this act. He knew about the key, but he didn't do it.
We find evidence and we follow the evidence, and wherever it leads us is where we go. You have a theory, theories change.
Eliminating suspects can often be more important than identifying suspects. The end goal, of course, being that there's one name left.
As you eliminate leads, you're narrowing focus, you're really putting everything into it because you got to run it out. You know, you've got to make sure because it's a person's life. Of course, when something like this happens, it's like a thunderclap. People start looking and are paranoid. They don't know. They think they may be next, you know. Especially in this area of Effingham County, because it still has that small town vibe.
When we're dealing with small town murders, people love to talk. It's not the same as a big city where no one talks. It's the exact opposite.
Rumors were spreading that Robin had been having an affair.
Infidelity in and of itself is relatively common as we can base on the amount of divorces and separations that go on. When an investigator learns that the partner of the deceased had been cheating, that creates a different mindset for the investigator. Infidelity is often part of the motive of someone's death, and it has to be investigated.
When we contacted Robin Height about it, she was forthcoming with the information. She didn't try to hide the fact that there was an affair.
She said the affair had been going on for some months.
When you start fooling around on your spouse, it's a recipe for disaster, and the chances of it not ending well vis-a-vis in a murder are extremely likely.
Believing Carrie may have been the main target, they need to determine his wife's whereabouts on the night of the crime.
Robin Height reported that she was at home all night.
There was dozens and dozens of man-hours spent tracking that down and getting cell phone records. Her cell phone was at the house all night long.
Robin never left the residence that night.
But what detectives soon discover changes everything.
She was having an affair with her brother-in-law, Craig.
Allegations of an illicit affair cast suspicion on Philip and Linda's oldest son, Craig.
We asked Craig about his relationship with Robin Height, and he's completely denied any sexual relationship with his sister-in-law. But we knew he was lying about the affair. That was a very crucial moment in the investigation.
He's brought in for further questioning.
We did a hard-hitting interview. He lied about the affair even more. So we scheduled him for a polygraph. He started to change his statements. He told us that he did have an affair.
If someone is caught in a lie by police, they will often change their story afterwards. They will often backpedal. It shines the light on them because they didn't tell the truth in the first place.
Craig's lie opens the door to a shocking suggestion that even for investigators is hard to stomach.
People didn't think there was any way he could shoot his mom. Knowing the community, knowing the status of this family, we knew that we were going to have to leave no stone unturned and no questions unanswered.
After multiple surgeries, the sole survivor of the attack, comes to.
The doctors at the hospital could not believe Linda was alive, and everybody just agrees that it's a miracle that she made it.
Linda is pressed for details about her attacker, but the impact of her trauma proves too great.
She did not know who the person was.
They were allowing other family to come in. Chris, her middle son, came in to see her first, and they had a very sweet reunion. As soon as he left, Craig came in. And everyone noticed that the heart monitor started racing. Blood pressure, heart rate, everything skyrocketed. He was just there a couple of minutes and he left. And then her heart went back to normal.
Family members were picking up on the fact that Craig showed visible sickness when he was found out that his mother would make a full recovery.
Craig's mother is unable to provide more information, so Special Agent Howard turns to her middle son, Chris, to see what he knows.
Chris indicated the family was just learning of the affair. This was just tearing his family apart.
For Philip to see the family that he and Linda had nurtured fall apart because of his oldest son's affair with his youngest son's wife, it was beyond devastating.
Chris says the conflict had recently come to a breaking point.
Craig was told an ultimatum that if he did not leave Robin Hyde alone and leave Carrie's family alone, that he would be completely removed from Philip's will. At the same time, Carrie was trying to remove Robin from his will.
Wills can tear families apart if the content of the wills are known. If it is disclosed that a person's not included in the will, or one person's getting more than another person, that could be a motive for someone to get very upset and perhaps commit murder.
Amid the denials, Carrie and Philip look for tangible proof of the affair.
Carrie installed a GPS device on Robin's vehicle. And so they knew where she had been going.
On that Saturday and that weekend, Craig and Robin spent the weekend together.
A friend of Philip's, who owned a helicopter, was asked by Philip to fly over this hunting cabin where they suspected Robin was meeting him.
He flew over, took some photographs of them.
Craig came to the immediate conclusion that that was his daddy sending somebody to spy on him.
Craig had been confronted by Philip in the past, and he had denied it. Craig couldn't deny the fact that they were having an affair anymore.
Craig was upset. He knew that everything was coming to an end.
The life that Craig wanted was the life that his brother lived. He wanted his brother's life. He wanted his brother's wife. Conflicts between brothers is as old as the Bible. It's as old as mankind. It's as old as history itself.
That Sunday, Carrie confronts his wife, Robin.
He says, I'm leaving, I'm filing for a divorce.
Carrie decided to go stay at his mother's house, which was the first time he had stayed there since their marriage.
When Carrie got there, he actually requested Chris to witness his signing of a new will. Chris told him, I don't have time right now, but we'll do it later. And unfortunately, there was no later.
It's compelling circumstantial evidence, but still not enough for an arrest.
The picture of the killer was coming into focus. But there was no physical evidence, no eyewitness, no DNA.
We knew, due to the nature of the crime and the people involved, that we didn't have to not only prove that Craig Hite committed the crime beyond a reasonable doubt, but we also had to prove that no one else committed the crime. That's different from most cases.
They need to place the gun in Craig's hands.
We determined the shotgun type that he used and the shell that he used would cause a mark, would leave a really big bruise.
So they asked Craig, would you mind removing your shirt? And he said that he had an accident getting out of a bathtub the other day, and he got some bruises. He was giving an explanation to a question that nobody was asking. When he pulled the shirt off, there were 2 bruises on this shoulder and 1 bruise on this shoulder. They were consistent with a shotgun being held.
It was the moment that I knew without a doubt that Craig Hite was the shooter.
Investigators believe Craig Hite had the means and the motive to commit the brutal assault on his family. They now need to solidify the case.
One of the most common misconceptions about murder investigations, for sure, is the need to arrest the killer right away. That's not the case. It's the exact opposite. You're trained to make sure before you lay a charge, you have a reasonable grounds of convicting the person you're charging. You gotta have that evidence first.
We wanted to make sure there were no loose ends when we made that arrest. We knew that we were only gonna have one good shot. For Craig Hite to have the opportunity to commit this crime, several pieces need to fall into place. Those included for Philip, Linda, and Carrie to be at the same place at the same time with no witnesses around.
They re-interview the one person with that knowledge, Carrie's wife, Robin.
He hasn't said to me, I did it, or, my God, if he had told me that he had done it, I would have called you. I mean, honestly, I just did not believe that he would do that, or could do that.
I can protect you, you tell me the truth. You bullshit me, I'm not gonna be able to protect you, but I'm gonna tell you something. If he did do this and he thinks you told us something, do not think for 1 second that he will not walk up in your house and shoot you in the face just like he did them.
If I knew something, I would have told you that day that you first questioned me. I would not lie to you about a murder.
She provides a critical new detail.
Rob and Craig are in communication with each other that night. And Robin says, you know, Carrie left me.
His opportunity came to fruition when Carrie and Robin had a huge fight that Sunday.
This proves that Craig knew Carrie was with his parents that night. While the evidence against him remains circumstantial, the timeline of that final fateful day shows he was the only one capable of committing the brutal attack.
The spark started when Robin and Craig were confronted about the affair. That's when the fuse was lit. He talked to Robin Hite, and he learned that night that Carrie was staying at the family home.
That's when he decided it's what he needed to do. He needed to to go in there and eliminate these problems in his life.
He got his shotgun. He goes over to the home. He uses the key to enter the residence. He goes in and he shoots Carrie, point blank, and rushes in to shoot Philip, who's awakened by the sound of the shotgun. Linda, thank God, was not in the bedroom and was in the bathroom. He turns and shoots her as she opens the door. At that time, she's knocked out. He picks up the shotgun shells. He goes out, he gets the gas. He pours gas. As he's going to set the fire, he hears his mother on the phone. At that time, he doesn't know if the local law enforcement will be there in a moment. He doesn't know how long she's been on the phone. He doesn't know if his brother Chris has been called, who is less than a mile away. So he has no other choice but to leave.
Police are now certain of his guilt, but as they prepare to make the arrest, they make a disturbing discovery.
Craig had actually moved into the home of Carrie Height and Robin Height and began to take over a father figure role. Craig was taking over his brother's life. He was raising his kids, driving his truck, sleeping with his wife. It just was appalling. We received the telephone call that at the end of the school year that Craig and Robin were moving to South Carolina.
On May 22, 2009, 9 months after the murders, Craig Height is arrested.
I truly believe that Craig is a sociopath. That's the only way somebody could commit the crimes that he committed.
When she is informed, Robin has a surprising response.
Initially, Robin didn't believe that he was involved.
I'm telling you, he is the one. You've seen the warrants that killed your husband, his father, and shot his mother.
He just kept saying, I did not do this. I swear to you, I did not do this. And I just believed him.
He really had a lot of control over Robin. But after his arrest and he no longer had control, she became more forthright into their relationship and what all had happened.
Robin's mindset started changing about his possible involvement.
As the trial begins, the family remains divided.
There are some members of the family that want to believe that he was not involved.
Chris never could reconcile the fact that his brother committed these horrific crimes. I truly believe Linda knows that he committed these crimes, but you have to remember that, I mean, she's still Craig's mother. She lost one son. She was about to lose another one. No mother would ever want to admit that she raised a son that's capable of doing what Craig did.
The jury ultimately found Craig Height guilty of murdering his father and his brother and brutally attacking his mother.
Craig Height is sentenced to 2 life terms, plus an additional 85 years.
He's essentially going to spend the rest of his life in prison.
You work hard, You put all this effort into a case and you get the verdict that you're seeking. You do feel good because you felt like justice has been served. But on the flip side of that, you still have a broken family and community that was going to take a long time to heal. Your heart goes out to that family.